And you're good to go.
Okay, good. Yeah, we have a quorum. So, can I have a motion to start the Gordon Burnell Governance Council meeting for June at 4:02 p.m.?
I move we start the meeting.
Thank you, Deb. And a second. He has got to be you.
Was it Michelle?
I think Michelle was raising
was-
her hand.
Yeah, I raised my hand.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
That's all right. I could have turned
couldn't
on my
see that you were
microphone.
on there we go. Okay, I extended my screen. Okay, great. Okay. Do we need to do a roll call? Sorry, I forgot from last time. Okay.
Yep. With the roll call.
Okay. So yeah, Sabai Jadi here. And just go around. Sorry, I'm flubbing this bad. Okay, it looks like we got Tina
Tina Martinez, Governing Council member.
and Michelle.
Michelle Staley, Governing Council member.
Okay, and Deb.
Deb DeTore, Governing Council member.
Okay, and it looks like Charmaine just got on as well.
Hello, everyone. Charmaine here.
Okay. All right, and can I get a motion to approve the agenda?
I move to approve the agenda.
Can I get a second?
I second.
Thank you, Charmaine. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, and how about a motion to approve last month's minutes?
I move to approve it with the addition of, I'm not sure, on page 2, under the director's report, special education policy update, point 2 says child I think it's supposed to say find.
Yes. That was the only thing I had on it too, was just that
Okay.
little typo.
Yeah, just a typo. But next year we won't know what we were talking about.
Okay, thank you, Deb. So the motion is to approve the minutes with the edit of changing that word to find. Can I have a second?
I
I
second.
second.
All right. It sounded like Charmaine got there. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Right. And we do always welcome public comment in our meetings. I don't believe that we have any for today. So we will go to our staff introduction. Beth, if you want to take it away.
Yeah, I appreciate a few minutes of your time to introduce Michael Archuleta to the board this afternoon. Michael started with us just finished his first year as an adult ed instructor out at MDC. His past is in corrections, and so he retired as a captain. Did I get that right, Mike? As a captain with Bernalillo County Detention Center before it moved into the current location. And then he spent some time since then working in education. And since he's joined us, he's proven to really be an amazing part of the team. Miss Jessie, who is one of my favorite people of all time, just this week where we were talking about professional learning, and she said, well, Mike's just, the best teacher. He has all this experience in teaching. And I'm like, yeah, I think he's just a natural teacher. She assumed he'd been teaching his whole life. But it really is a second career for him to be in education. He launched our IET programs, our integrated education and training programs out at MDC. So he's helping students not only get their GED, but also prepare for entrance into the mixed construction trades. And he's had 2 successful cohorts with that. It's really a pleasure to work with you, Mike. So thanks for joining us today.
Thank you. Thank you.
And I ask all the staff members to just spend a few minutes kind of describing how you see our mission and vision in your daily work.
Well, it started in the 80s when I met Gordon Burnell. Gordon Burnell was an amazing man. One of the things that he wanted was to follow through with education there at BCDC. And as I climbed the ranks, I became a captain and was in charge of the Old West Side facility. Gordon asked me if he could have a pod for education and some other things he was working on. And we cleared out a pod. and where he could have his education and programming for some of the inmates, whatever it may be. You know, they may have been doing art. I know they were doing education, but that was something that he wanted, and I saw what he was doing. Now come full circle, leaving corrections. I was given the opportunity by Beth to come in and help these people, males and females, walk away with a GED certificate and have more than just their clothing and personal items in their hands walking out the door. They had a piece of paper that would help them get into a work field and be able to be productive and stop the recidivism. And so therefore that's where I'm at with that. And it's proven to be, with the employees that I work with, it's great. I love it. I will be back, of course, because, you know, we want people not to come back. We want them to be productive. And with the IET, as Beth explained, part of that is the OSHA 10 and first aid CPR and workplace readiness with the construction base. And the IET is a big tool that they can use when they walk out. The first aid CPR is part of that tool that they use when they walk out. Having a GED is a big tool, and learning how to go through job interviews, write resumes, and deal with customer service, things like that. And the construction stuff we're working with, we don't get to use drills and saws and things like that, but it's something that they're able to walk out with and be able to go out and show that they've done this, they've completed it, and they are job ready. And I thank you, Beth, for everything.
Yeah, I appreciate you, Mike. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks. Any governing council members have questions for Mike?
Oh, just thank you.
Well, Mike, you're welcome to hang out and see what a board meeting is like, but you're also welcome to disappear into the evening. We appreciate your time.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Awesome, thanks.
Thank you, Mike. Appreciate you.
Thank you.
Okay, awesome. That was really good to hear about.
Mhm.
Okay, so moving us along the agenda, I did have just one past business item that I added to the agenda. Just a reminder to contact the list of legislators that was sent out, and maybe Beth, if we could get that list resent, it'd be awesome. If you could just look at that list, and this is all the legislators who gave money to Gordon Burnell in their capital outlay. If you can just look through that and find a legislator, if you happen to live in their district, that would be ideal to reach out. Or you could also just choose one, or if you have a relationship with a legislator, don't feel the need to reach out to all of them. But if you live in the district of one of them, it'd be great to reach out and just say thank you for setting aside some money for Gordon Burnell. And the reason I added it is because I totally haven't done it yet, and I needed a reminder.
I'm also guilty.
Yeah, I don't. Has anybody, Deb or Tina or Charmaine, have any of you guys done it yet?
No.
Okay, cool.
No, I
I'm
appreciate
wondering,
it.
I just want to ask a real quick question, because I am wondering, I did not do it. I will do it. But I'm also wondering that as a group, and I wouldn't mind making the cards or getting the cards, a written mailed thank you to all of them, which that might be, it might not get lost in the phone calls, in the recorded calls or whatever. So I just am wondering about that as well. That, because we could even, we wouldn't have to sign it individually. You could, I can just sign the governance council or something like that. And we also mail something. So it's
Mhm.
almost double. I don't know people's thoughts on that.
I think it's a good idea.
I love that.
Okay, so I'll get or make the cards.
And I'll send out a list of those names again.
And their addresses if you have them, but it's probably pretty easy to get them
It is.
online.
Mhm.
And you guys are okay with me just writing the governance council on there?
Yeah.
Because otherwise I could drive them around and everybody could sign them. I don't mind doing that either. I like road trips. Okay.
Yeah, thank you so much, Michelle. That's an amazing idea.
Well,
Okay,
and I can ask later because I wanted to ask something about graduation and I think that'll come under new. So,
Are completely spaced out.
okay. So moving on to the finance review. Sammy, you want to take it away?
Sure thing. Get it. Okay, so we didn't have any bars this month just because we did approve our blanket bar last month. And so all the bars that we've been submitting are utilizing that blanket bar. Next month, I'll have a list of all the bars that were approved using the blanket bar so that you guys can see which ones we use that for. So we'll go ahead and move on right away. Just going through our graphs, our charts, real quick, just because we do have a few other things to discuss. Everything looks good here. Our reimbursable funds, we are spending down almost completely, which is great. There's going to be a few little entries just to make sure we get those spent down by June 30th and then request the reimbursement back. The only one I wanted to point out was this Title II. You'll see it was 100% and now it's 0. We had an open PO that had encumbered all of the funds that we thought we owed this vendor. And when we went and checked with the vendor to see why they had an invoice, they said, oh, you don't owe us any money. You paid this last year. All of the services that you received this year were from last year still. And so we didn't have time to encumber and pay that money out basically at this point. And so we did have to just close that PO and that money is going to go back to APS. But just so you guys know, for that specific fund, that's why it went from 100% to 0%. Any questions on that before I move on? No? Awesome. We're receiving all of the revenue that we're submitting for, which is great here. Our operational fund, we're at 94%. So we'll receive our last operational deposit this month in June, hopefully soon, and we will be good there. Looking at our expenditure comparison, we're pretty similar to what we've been doing. We had talked how we potentially are not going to have any more high outliers here, but we may have one more potentially. And then next year we will potentially have another one as we start the plans for building an elevator for the new building. In the classroom, which I always like to point out here, this function code looking at instruction and instructional support. We're sitting at about that 51% still, similar to the rest of the year. Our numbers are skewed because we did the large capital payments. That's why we went from this 65 to this 50, and our capital is a lot higher. But as long as we don't have those capital outliers, our numbers would be higher. But I think we might have them again next year. So just so you guys know, that's kind of where we're at. Looking at our liquidity, we're sitting at about a 7.46. And we do have a conversation to come back to on this, but I'm going to keep going through the rest of the packet and then circle back here in just a minute. Our budget analysis, this is similar to that graph, looking at all of our funds, just a little bit more in detail, looking at our budget, our actuals, encumbrance, and then our balances. But you can see here we have lots of good percentages, high percentages, and anything that's not a high percentage for the most part, it carries over. And so that's why I like this SB9 cash, SB9, HB33, all of those carry over. I did point out a few checks on our check listing just because they were higher payments that we were paying out specifically to decrease our cash balance a little bit. And so we have some science curriculum here. This is a software here. And then there's one more for the, yes, our Nucleus subscription for MDC is here. I think those were the main ones that I wanted to point out. Were there any questions on any of the other checks?
Is the Nucleus subscription for 1 year?
It is. It's actually a little bit higher than it has been in the past because We're moving Nucleus platform to our community students as well. They're developing a data dashboard. Inside the facility, it's about $45,000, and that is worth it because without it, students wouldn't have access to technology. And then the additional 15,000, which it is an increase because previously we've only paid for the corrections platform, is because we're having all of our students in the community and adult ed and all programs and all campuses log in, not for the security features, but because it will help mine all of the student data and present it in a really student and advisor friendly dashboard, which we're hopeful can really help students as they navigate, that path to graduation, understanding and tracking all the things they're doing on all of these different platforms. So it's expensive and it is an annual fee. Karina, that 45,000 is a 3-year. So that's not annual. That gets 15,000 a year, gets us the next 3 years. And that science curriculum is actually a 6-year. And so we've got textbooks, but we've got consumables that will come, like workbooks and lab materials that will come every year for a full cycle. So not all of it is, not all of those big expenses are just annual, but the Nucleus one is expensive. But it's worth it to me.
Cool. Yeah, sounds like it.
Beth, I noticed that there are a couple of checks for ACEs. Is that ACEs training for the staff?
ACEs is what does ACEs stand for? Something cooperative
Association of
educational
Charter
Association for Cooperative
Association of
Educational
Charter
Services.
Education Services.
Okay, different ACEs. Okay.
So yeah, that's a cooperative. Like a procurement bargaining, like CES. And
Okay.
so we pay through ACEs, we pay LDD, who is our IT services. We also
And
pay
phone
K-12,
services as well.
which is, K-12, which is our business office. And we also pay JMP Academy, which is our SIS and state reporting contracted support that we utilize. And so ACEs, that 20,000 is actually 3 recurring contracts: IT, business office, and state reporting support.
Okay.
We also pay for the curriculum professional development for cadre services as well.
Yeah, there's other contractors that go through there as well. You're right. Thank you, Sam.
Okay.
And other big purchases, like just like CES. So anytime that I don't want to go out to RFP or I want to make sure that I'm following procurement, if I can, then we'll open those contracts through either ACEs or CES to do that.
Okay. Thank you.
Mhm.
Any other questions on any of these? Awesome. We have all of our detailed reports, just looking at balances of every account code. So I'm just going to skip down from those. And then we have our balance sheet report, very similar again, just looking at our liabilities, our cash, our fund balance, and then statement of revenues and expenditures, and then our bank reconciliation. Of course, we tie out back to our ending balance here. And I always like to go over our outstanding check listing. This one specifically, we are still figuring out. I'm probably going to have Diane just reissue it, or we can cancel it at this point, just before the end of the fiscal year. It's not considered stale dated yet. Still stale dated is about a year, 6 months to a year. But we don't like having anything more than a couple months. And so that one I think will probably clear. This one for Charles, we did void the check, reissue it, and we actually did a direct deposit. So he got that money already, so we didn't have to worry about him depositing the check. And so that one should be cleared. And then you'll see the rest are all for May. This one was a check for Makamas. This was an outstanding check that we had for quite a few months. I think it's from December. We actually ended up having a credit on our account, so they didn't even need this check. So they were going to shred it. And so we had to just cancel the check. Looking at our ending balance, like I said, we do tie out here. So that looks good. And then of course, just our bank statement. and all of the checks that were cashed. Any questions on anything that I went over? Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and backtrack up to our liquidity, just so that we can have a discussion about our cash balances. In the finance committee meeting, we did discuss how we've been discussing the potential of a cash sweep and kind of what we want to do at this point. We did decide that we were going to pay out all of our payrolls for the rest of the contract, which was through July, to make sure that we account for all of our liabilities. And so those will all be paid out before June 30th. So we're not put in a pickle there. But Beth and I also discussed at one point when we were looking at the budget and the potential of this is making an additional principal payment on our new building. And so we had discussed a dollar amount prior, just based on what we were looking at in the budget. And then when we met with the finance committee, we discussed other options and potentially what we want to do regarding that. And so I don't know, Sabah, if you want to go over, if you want me just to kind of go over more of what we talked about or explain to the GC, what do you want to do?
Keep going. You're doing a great
Okay.
job of it.
So there are two numbers that I want to clarify for everyone here looking. This is our cash balance, including all funds. So all of our funds that can carry cash is this 2.1 million. Our bank account is very similar to this number because it's the cash that we have. However, our operational cash, so our general fund, our main fund that we have it comes directly from the state. It's our state equalization guarantee. We're sitting at about 1.8 million. And available in our budget right now, we have about 1.2 million. So that means that about 600,000 is encumbered in other places, right? We're hoping to spend by the end of the year. And so our thought process was to make a principal payment of, you said 100,000, right? 100,000 to lower our cash balance, because if we do have a sweep, they are going to take from that cash of 1.2 approximately. And the amount that they could potentially take is based on a percentage, so that all schools, it's fair for all schools because a lot of schools don't have a lot of cash. And so our thought was to pay a principal payment, an additional principal payment by the end of this month, so that we can lower that cash balance, so that if they do take money, it's hopefully a little bit less money that they take.
And if they don't take money, then we didn't spend all of our money on the building when we didn't have to. I mean, that wouldn't be a bad thing to reduce the debt that we owe on the building, but we also have lease assistance that comes in, and, you know, if there wasn't going to be a cash balance sweep, then we would want to hold on to this money because we could use it for anything. And when we put it in the building, it's gone. It's, you know, it does reduce our debt, but it's gone. Yeah.
And maybe I'll just,
Yeah, sorry, Sabah.
oh no, go ahead, Deb, please.
I'm just thinking it reduces our debt, plus it reduces the amount we have to pay ultimately because the interest, we paid it in advance, so it decreases the amount of interest we also have to pay on our debt. So that's not a bad thought.
Not,
Yeah.
And I was just going to add, we're kind of operating under this cash sweep. It's like a Schrodinger's cash sweep. Like we don't know if it's going to happen until it happens. It's based on the federal budget. If they pass it without social services in there, the likelihood of a cash sweep goes up. But also, even if they do pass it that way, there's no guarantee that there's going to be a cash sweep. And no one knows for sure. Like there's wildly differing opinions and predictions on what's going to happen. And so in the finance committee, we talked about, let's go with a conservative number to put onto the principal payment, so that if a cash sweep does happen, we can feel good about the fact that we've spent a bit of that money and they'll take a little bit less. But if a cash sweep doesn't happen, we won't feel like, oh man, we just gave like a ton of money towards the principal, and now we're regretting that decision. So that's kind of how we arrived at that 100K with the input from Beth and Sammy too. So yeah, I would love to hear from other people who aren't on the finance committee though, what your thoughts are on all of this.
Hi guys, it's Tremaine. I think it's a good idea. I was looking at everything and I think it's a very wise decision.
Cool. Okay, good. Then we'll cover that in our action items. We'll do that approval of that amount.
And I agree with the idea. And I will say my internet is showing unstable. My CenturyLink is out. I'm using a Verizon backup, and things are not well in the internet world in my neighborhood.
Oh,
If you need to turn your camera off, Michelle, sometimes that helps if we're getting choppy.
That's
Sabah,
all that I had, I think, right, on my side.
yep, Sabah, do you want to address the action items A, B, and C for, oh, A, B, and D? We didn't really talk about C. But I can, or how, what order you want to go, Sabah? Do you want to do action items first, or do you want me to talk about contracts and purchase orders?
Let's go over contracts and purchase orders, and then we can just do all the action items at once.
Okay. So the contracts that are on the agenda for approval today are our SY26 contracts that are over $60,000, because all contracts or POs $60,000 or above do require governance council approval. And so I'm not remembering exactly how many. It's certainly not all of our staff members, but a good chunk of them are level 2 and level 3 teachers, and our
Social worker.
our level 2 and level 3 social workers, and our leadership. So a good majority of our staff, level 1 teachers, some support staff, and some of our adult ed staff are not quite at the $60 level. But there is a good chunk of them. And so the action item would be to approve the contracts for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17 staff members. And I linked a folder with their contracts in there in case you wanted to take a look at them. That is the contracts above 60,000. Also, an action item there is the principal payment, and then it's just a good reminder that when you are approving payroll and liabilities this time, you're not just approving payroll and liabilities, to date, but also just you're aware that we're going to pay out July as well towards the end of this month. So just keeping that in mind, that by the end of June, we'll have paid out in their entirety all of our contracted work for this fiscal year. So that's the addition of the contracts above 60,000. So now you've got A, B, C, and D that you can do. So
I want to ask a question.
Yeah.
I was not able to get in to review the items. So when we get ready to vote, I've been debating, since yesterday when I couldn't get in, and I did send a request to get an okie dokie, but I'm considering abstaining, because that's what I would do in other boards that I've been on, is I would abstain if I wasn't able to review the information for any reason. But I know that a governance council is a little bit different than other boards. So I guess I'm asking for clarification of approving something I haven't had the opportunity to review, or is it okay to abstain?
I mean, I don't know the answer about abstaining, and I guess just thinking off the top of my head, the motion could approve as long as it has a majority vote, is my understanding. also, these contracts won't go into effect until after another board meeting, so the board could also wait and vote on that until after Michelle has had an opportunity to review, which I don't think is problematic either. And then Michelle, just to clarify, I didn't address the request for access, because I had thought maybe you would realize, and I apologize, that you were using a different email address when trying to access them. So the permissions were given to one address, Michelle Stolly, and you were coming in like on a community connection or something. And so
Right.
I'll get with you and make sure that I have whatever email addresses you want to utilize, given
Okay,
access.
well, I'll say, I thought that could have been the problem, and I didn't see the email come through that I was approved. So I'll go back real quick while you're going through these other things. I'll listen quickly or carefully, and then at least review them and feel comfortable in voting on something.
Okay, just make sure you're logging in as the Michelle family.
Yeah,
That makes
I'll
sense, and
try
not
that.
as the other one.
yeah, I'll try that.
Also, revisiting that if it was tabled until the next meeting, it would not be problematic either, I don't think. So either way.
Yeah, Michelle, would you prefer to wait until next meeting, or are you okay with voting now?
As long as I can get in and look at them, I'm fine with voting today. I just personally would feel uncomfortable voting
I
to
think I
approve
agree.
something that I haven't reviewed.
Especially expenses of that.
That makes sense, Michelle. to me.
So, okay. So I'm trying to get over there now. It's just everything I have in Google Docs is set up under that creating connection. So it'll take me a bit.
Well, Michelle, why don't we table just this one little bit? If Beth doesn't think it makes a difference, and I don't know, Sammy, if you want to rule whether it makes a difference too, that we can vote on people's contracts, because I agree, I wouldn't want to vote if I didn't look at what the numbers were. We can do it next month. If there's no rush, I don't see why we need to do it.
Yeah, we can table it if you guys would like to. I mean, I think it'll just give Michelle more time to like go through them because they're like 3 pages long each.
Right.
So that's why, or 2 pages long each.
And see, Beth, I'm still not seeing even under the Staley where you okayed it. But anyway, if we're going to table it, then I'll get with Beth tomorrow.
Perfect.
And
Okay.
we can be good to go. And I do apologize. I will tell you, I went to the charter school conference thing, and a lot of the things that I was just feeling lost on, I got a lot of good information on. So, but this is one of them that helped me kind of clarify. It's like, oh shoot, I don't know about that. So, okay, thank you.
No problem.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. And yeah, so it won't delay things on your guys' end in terms of getting those accounts and payrolls paid, or the contracts and purchase orders paid. Okay. So
Get them all set up, and then, I mean, if someone has, something next meeting, then it'll be before we run that first payroll.
okay, great. Okay, so can I get a motion to table the approval of contracts and purchase orders over 60,000?
I'll motion to table the approval of contracts and purchase orders above 60,000.
And I
And a
probably
second?
better second it since it's my
Yeah,
fault. I'll second it.
All right, thank you, Charmaine, for making the motion, and Michelle for seconding the motion. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, great. All right, and can I get a motion to approve accounts and payroll vouchers?
I move to approve the accounts and payroll vouchers.
I'll second.
Thank you, Tina. Thank you, Deb, for the second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, great. And we don't need to approve budget bars because we have the blanket bar, right?
Yeah.
So we're good on that. All right, and okay, so I'm going to make this motion I'm going to ask for this motion to make a principal payment on our new building for $100,000, with just one caveat that if between now and June 28th, we get more information about a cash sweep, that we will revisit. We will revisit this decision. But yeah, can I get a motion to make the 100K payment, principal payment on our new building, with that asterisk about getting more information? Sorry, that's hard to say as a motion.
Okay, I'll try it, Sarah. I move that we approve the principal payment of $100,000 for a new building to go towards our building. But if we find out by June 28th that there's not going to take any of our money, we will revisit this at a later date. Is that what we said? Okay.
Perfect. Thank you, Deb. Do I have a second?
Nice.
A second.
Tina, I think I got you first on there. So Tina on the second, and all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. Thank you, everybody. Okay, and our last action item is the phone policy. Beth, did you want to talk about that at all?
Yeah, I appreciate it. Let's see. Just get over here and pull it up. So in this year's legislative session, there was a new law passed that all schools have to have a electronic device and cell phone policy. The guidance from PED is fairly flexible, so there's not a mandate on what that policy needs to be, just that there has to be a policy in place. This policy was 100% written by Chris Pauls and his North Forth High School leadership team, which consists of Jake and Carol in some ways. And then he's had lots of conversations with North Forth High School staff, not all of whom are in favor of this policy, but all of whom have agreed to be compliance with this policy and to give it a real shot. Essentially what this means is that there's a schedule for the day that consists of some advisory time, some self-directed learning time, which looks more like a study hall, and then time for direct instruction. And so that focused learning time and that direct instruction time does make up the most of the day, but there are breaks and advisory times in there as well. But for the most of the day, students will be putting their phones in Yonder pouches. If you've not seen a Yonder pouch, it's a cute, I should have brought one up, they're already downstairs. It's this cute little Teflon, really heavy duty fabric pouch that is just big enough for a nice size phone. When you put your phone in there and you close it, it locks with the magnet. And you really would have to have some power tools to break into it. But with a nice little Yonder pouch key, which is really just a strong magnet, you hold it up to it, it opens and the phone comes out. Additionally, he's taking those Yonder pouches and he's mounting them to the desks in spaces in the classroom. So it's not like your phone has to be way, way over there. It's not like teachers are collecting these Yonder pouches. Wherever the student is sitting, that's where their Yonder pouch is. Okay. They put their phone in it, it stays right there next to them. And then when it's done, you open it up and they take it out. Lots of input from lots of schools who have done this. And I've sat in on several charter leader meetings with lots of people talking about it. Most schools who've done it with fidelity would never go back. You know, there's quite a few charter leaders who are like, it's the best thing we ever did. Do it hard, do it strong, don't give in, and it will shift your culture. There are some schools who weren't able to implement it completely and so struggled, right? And that's the feedback. If you don't have 100% staff on board, if one teacher isn't making students do it, or, you know, there's workarounds, you know, or if there's no consequences, right, for not following through, then some schools have had a hard time and certainly shared that. But this is all the high school team at North Forth. Again, not all staff agree, but they've all committed. There's been lots of discussion, and we'll see what happens. Hopefully it goes smoothly. I laugh because it's hard, because I'm addicted to my phone terribly. And, you know, I've looked at it several times since this meeting started. And so, you know, some of the feedback is to be cognizant that many of our adolescents and youth have been using electronic devices as a regulation tool since they were toddlers. And so to expect, you know, some dysregulation, to expect some essentially withdrawals from you know, a real both physical and mental addiction to devices. But to talk a lot about why it's important to learn these skills, you know, to walk alongside with students and put our phones away as well during those times, and to just kind of hold the line that you got to learn sooner or later where the boundaries are, right? And so we'll see how it goes. Any thoughts or feedback?
I've only got one question, and that's related to the 504, because I was glad to see that in there, because I will tell you, just more and more, you see students and politicians and newscasters, their reports are always coming off, their notes are on their device, and they're looking at their device to do that presentation. The one thing I'm wondering about, because it would be allowed under a 504, and I don't know if you have any students that have the use of technology under their 504 plan. But if you did, how would you maintain confidentiality for the special education student? Because you all are doing a great job, I understand, on full inclusion. So.
I mean, that's a pretty, it's a great question, Michelle, and you know, I don't have a built-in answer ready to go. I do know that Chris Pauls, who is the administrator of the high school down there, had a pretty in-depth conversation with our SPED coordinator, you know, about minimizing, you know, the if possible, really looking at and understanding if there are accommodations, you know, why and what else has been tried, because he was concerned about, you know, that exact issue, like, you know, both how do students with an IEP or a 504 feel if they're using it, you know, that's the reason why, and how other students would react, right? And the conversation that might ensue in terms of, well, why do they get to? And how come I don't? And so, you know, my understanding out of that conversation was kind of an assurance that we currently don't have many students who have a mention of use of technology. There are a few, you know, that say things like can listen to music while independently working, you know, or those types of things. So you bring up a great question, and I wasn't present during their conversation, but I know that both the special education coordinator and Chris have had ongoing conversations, and I'm happy to get a little bit more information and bring it back, you know, via an email shortly or make sure it's in the past business.
Well, my assumption was, and so then they probably already have this figured out. So yeah, maybe getting information back. I support the policy. I support the policy. It's just that piece on the 504. And, you know, I guess in some ways I always think of adults different than I do elementary kids that are in the school and stuff like that than I do the adults who are. I've looked at my phone 5 or 6 times while we've been talking, so I get it. Because part of me, maybe just it's an education thing for all students, that there are individuals that have accommodations and they have that right to have that accommodation depending on what happens with DEI. Yeah, I just wanted to ask about it, and I know it's not being ignored. That makes me feel a little bit better, and my assumption is they'll figure it out.
Yeah. I'm gonna make myself a note though, Michelle, to get a little bit more information about what Chris and Alicia are thinking at the moment, and then I'll report back as well.
Thank you.
Then are we tabling the phone policy too?
If we wanted to table it for that information, we could. Again, we'll meet before the
School year.
right at either the school year. Our July meeting will be right before the school year starts. I don't know, Michelle, if you wanted to table it or if you just wanted to maybe approve it with the condition that you get information about that how confidentiality and implementation will be respectful for those students with 504 and IEPs.
Yeah, and I think it'd just be all in the way the motion is put out there, that it just as that they will consider how to protect a student's right or support a student's accommodation. So yeah, I'm fine with voting on. I don't have a problem with the policy. It's just sometimes when you're approving something, and for me, as you guys know, and I'm an acquired taste, it's real hard for me sometimes to put a puzzle together without any of the pieces being turned face up. So, but I'm fine with moving ahead on it if everybody else is.
Okay, I'm okay moving ahead with it, and yeah, thank you so much, Michelle. I appreciate your questions, and yeah, if you're an acquired taste, then I like it, and I'm glad that you're asking questions and being thorough. I do have a quick question about this too. Have they, in developing this and then thinking about like the rollout of the new policy, have they established, like, beyond just students won't be looking at their phones during class time, like other goals associated with this, other outcomes that they're hoping that would happen as a result of the no phone thing? Or is it kind of like, this is an experiment, we're not really sure what the outcomes are going to be?
State law.
Yeah, I mean, besides, being compliant with the law and having a policy, I really do think that Chris specifically, who's spearheading this, again, he's the high school, he's the assistant principal who runs the high school here at Northforth. I think he's really expecting an uptick in productivity. There is a large cohort of students who spend a lot of time on their devices and may not be making as much progress as they could. And so I think that, he's hopeful and optimistic and really kind of looking forward to data that says that because they're more focused and they don't have that distraction, that we'll see an increase in the rate of credits earned, because it's a self-paced environment or, a guided paced environment. And so a student who can watch a whole movie, may not, get anything done in that time period. One of the things that I thought was really interesting in the conversations that I had was it's less about the conversation I had with other charter leaders, Stephanie over at Amy Beal. They do not have a phone policy. Because she believes, their phone policy is that students will keep their phones away, but not that they're getting, put into a yonder pouch or anything like that. And she really feels it's a classroom management issue more than it is a policy or what devices are we using to lock them up, or are we locking them up? And so I thought that was really interesting because this really will bring up a lot of classroom management things. It's easy to manage a large group of students if half of them are immersed in their phone and oblivious to what's going on around anyway, because they're engaged in their phone. And so certainly we're looking to increase directed learning experiences, what we're calling direct instruction. That's all up and down our DASH plan, which I'll get to share with you in July. We've almost finalized is how do we get more collaborative and cooperative learning happening where students are doing the same thing at the same time with each other. So there's a real push for that. And we certainly don't want the phone distraction during that time. But I think we're also really hoping to see an increase of self-directed learning during that focused learning time when there's not an option to be scrolling through TikTok or watching YouTube videos or even just jamming out to music. I listen to music a lot while I work. And so there's parts of this that are hard for me to swallow as well. Not just that I look at my phone, but also that I use things to regulate, like background noise. I'm the person who has the TV on in the house when I clean and music on in the office when I'm working. And so, this is hard for a lot of us to kind of swallow, but it is an experiment in terms of, schools who have implemented with success really do see an increase in outcomes. And so we're hopeful to get the same.
So did you get the response you needed? I have a question.
Yeah, for sure. Go ahead.
Okay. The one thing I'm wondering about, and you have to remember I'm early childhood, so we look more at supporting the change of behavior than we do at having the rules. But I'm wondering if just in some ways, if there isn't part of some life skill stuff that can be aligned with this policy. Like I know for myself, if I had to call any of my friends without my phone, I have one phone number memorized, much different than when I was young. But that would be another way to maybe support the students in not feeling something's being taken away, and support I have the skill to do above and beyond, or I have the skill to know. Because the one thing I will say, I think for a lot of folks, and I even do it myself, I will look something up if I don't have a full grasp on what somebody is talking about. And that is, I think, a learning skill. And I think that's self-learning in many ways. But it seems to me that the opinion of the teachers or their experience is students are watching movies and YouTubes and not using it as a learning device. So was there any input from students on anything related to this?
On this policy, there was not input from students. There wasn't. There have been well, I take that back. It wasn't so much as like a survey or a opportunity for them to participate in the language. There were conversations. They know this is coming. They've heard it in community meetings. It's going to go out in a broadcast to students and families about 2 weeks before school, and then a reminder week, and then that first week another kind of, hey, this is new, don't forget, right? A lot of talk about the policy at first was, can they keep it, put it away, and then only when they pull it out inappropriately will it go in the yonder. But the yonder rep really changed Chris's mind, that from the beginning, at least when you're building the culture, the stronger boundaries, the better. The clear cut, this is what we're doing. In terms of how it relates to life skills, we do have our graduate profile. I'm kind of squinting at it because I can't see that far without my glasses. It's on the wall across the room from me. But there are certainly components of our graduate profile like situational awareness. So in what situations is it appropriate to have a phone out and when isn't? Professionalism is up there. How I impact the world and how the world impacts me is up there. So thinking about how my distraction might be contributing to other people's distractions. They will still have access to Chromebooks and laptops. And so if they are looking up information, those certainly they'll still have access to. And that's an interesting point that people made. If you're trying to stop the texting, they'll just start chatting. And so the resourcefulness of students to continue to use technology will probably happen. But on our Chromebooks, they can't get to YouTube, they can't get to TikTok. They certainly could still share a document and chat back and forth, or find ways to engage in things that are distracting, and or use technology in a positive way, look up definitions, Google things. So it's not a technology-free zone. It is a personal technology-free time.
Okay, and I feel bad because you can't see me agreeing with you by shaking my head.
I love it though.
Internet
You're shaking your head. No, you're good.
All right. Unless there's further discussion, can I get a motion to approve the phone policy for the North Fourth campus?
I move to approve the phone policy for North Fourth Campus.
Thank you, Charmaine. And a second.
Second.
Thank you, Deb. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, next it looks like we got in compliance and policy review, the staff climate survey.
I should have had the phone policy up there as well. And so I might take, I do want to talk about the staff climate survey. Wow, what an interesting endeavor. I was really surprised by some of it. I'm really grateful for all of it. I do at the end of every school year, I have the very first year I had a mentor or a coach who encouraged me to have like an exit interview at the end of every year. And so this was the fourth time I did it. I take about 2 or 3 days and I book back to back, half an hour with every single staff member. And so, with 32 staff members, that takes about 16 hours. So it's spread out over a couple days in that last week. And I tell staff members, this isn't feedback for you. That already happened in our professional development plans with our direct supervisors. We go over the contracts as they're drafted, and I had new job descriptions this year. So we went over job descriptions. And then I say, this is a chance for me to listen. And so I want to hear things that you're proud of, because I'm certain that there are things this year that you are really proud of that I didn't get to hear about and didn't get to glow on. So I'd love to hear that. I'd love to hear the things that you're really excited about, that you're enthusiastic about, good things that you want to see continue. I want to hear any concerns that you might have, anything you want to get off your chest, anything you think I need to hear. And so that's that almost verbatim was my script this year. It's been very similar the last couple of years. And then I tried my very, very best not to talk, because I'm a talker or a problem solver, but really just to listen and to take notes. And so I did that again this year, and certainly had a lot of confirmation, and because that staff climate survey was anonymous, and the data was put together and analyzed by a contractor, because when I first looked at it, I was overwhelmed by it and I couldn't really process it. So I happened to be working with Tara on something else, and I'm like, aren't you doing like this kind of thing in your day job? And she was like, yeah. And so she put together the reports for me. But I was, a lot of that information was reinforced in person, one-on-one, in those exit conversations. I can almost now tell you what all of the anonymous statements, who they belong to, because people were willing to have those conversations face to face when I opened the door and asked for it. I've had some really what I'm calling a little more upfront and courageous conversations with leadership about the importance of us being consistent in the way that we represent and the way that we are seeing people and understanding, what they're trying to express. I could keep on babbling, but I'm curious if anyone has any. I learned a lot through this process. I have some real next steps in terms of things that I want to work on, specifically with Chris Cazone and Anya Salas, who are both leaders that are involved at the MDC campus. It was pretty obvious that the biggest concerns right now stem from some personal conflicts out at MDC that were
Do you
unresolved.
think, just real quick, is this something that should be in closed session?
I mean, I don't think so. These results
Okay.
were shared with staff, not necessarily the raw statements. If you look at the staff,
Right. I looked at theirs and I
results,
looked at this. I just didn't know if we were mentioning names, so.
I don't intend to mention any names. If we wanted to talk about personnel issues, that is probably better done in a closed session. But in terms of the themes and the the general feedback. It was organized in ways that was meant to be specific to the people it was written to, so that individuals could really see what people said about them, to them. And then there was a report that was put together just for leaders, in a hope that we could learn together. And then there was an all staff report with those the same things that I've mentioned now, those themes presented in a way that I felt were appropriate for all people to hear and see. And all that being said, you know, I really learned a lot from this. I'm very grateful for people's willingness to share both anonymously and in person with me. You know, really committed alongside Chris and Ani to lean in and understand a little bit better how we as a leadership team can support all staff members out at MDC, with the hope that, you know, next time we take this survey, we see some outcomes that are different specifically for that campus.
I have a couple of quick questions that, Beth, I noticed that a couple of things that kept coming up and up in that feedback report were culture, being one of them. Is there anything that is currently in place to work on culture? Are there plans to, you know, have more kind of cultural staff building activities? What are you thinking?
We have the foundation of some really good stuff. I think what the difference will be moving forward is a quicker use of some of the tools and strategies that we already have in place. So in terms of like restorative practices, those start with your preventative and your proactive, you know, types of events. And so you know, when we take people out to lunch at the end of the year, or when we start meetings with our community agreements, when we do little wraparounds in terms of, you know, what's your favorite summer food, you know, those types of team building activities, I think are really important to continue. I like those. People kind of roll their eyes at me a lot, but we do them anyway. And so, you know, I'm happy to kind of double down on that. We also have a contractor who's really good at having restorative conversations, and she's worked in tandem with our social worker so that when there is conflict between individuals, they have a space that does not include administrators to so it's not punitive. Mm-hmm. And that has worked fairly well. The problem, from my opinion, is leadership didn't cue in earlier and move things along that path in terms of, I think if a restorative conversation could have happened months ago, months ago, then some of the residual things that continue to simmer, you know, could have been avoided. And so I think for me, my own personal learning, my own ownership, you know, as I say that, and the culture came up because it was a culture survey. The questions were very driven about trying to understand culture. And so, you know, it was the kind of purpose and point of the survey. But things that I'm, you know, I say that culture is important to me, and yet I want to acknowledge that for the majority of this year, I wasn't really present at MDC to observe culture and to see firsthand, you know, how people were feeling or how people were interacting. And so, you know, I want to be present, and I'm going to do a better job of consistently doing that. That's the one of the things that I'm really committed to. I started last year trying to go to MDC 1 day a week, but pretty quickly I didn't go for a long period of time. And it's not because I don't like the drive or, you know, the people or the space. What I'm really going to do this summer is go, and I've asked for a corner of my own. I was on my laptop. And so the difference in my office with my 2 big screens and my mouse and do you know what I mean? And I can Zoom and I can do things. And then I'd go out to MDC and I'd be on my laptop with not even a mouse. And so it was never like, I don't want to go to MDC because I don't want to engage. It was, I don't want to go to MDC because I have a lot to do and I'm going to be more comfortable in my space. And so I'm really committed to setting up my own space out there so that when I am there, I'm comfortable, I can settle in, and I can be present. I hope that that's one way that I can just have a better pulse on, you know, and have an open door policy that's really an open door policy and not an invitation to come to my door 50 miles away policy, which I think is a big difference. And then I've also, like I said, had some really meaningful conversations and will continue to have meaningful conversations with the rest of the leadership team about how we lean into, you know, our restorative conversations earlier, how we make sure that people are being seen and heard in a way that we're not dismissive of their perspective or coming across as that way. I don't really think that anything that happened was out of maliciousness. I don't. I really, really don't. I think, you know, that people were and are and continue to try to do the very best that they can. And there was just unresolved conflict that simmered for too long. And then it became a culture issue.
Yeah. So the other one was feedback. And I'm just curious, I heard you mention earlier that the staff have PDPs, but is there, I mean, do charters use the state evaluation tool? I don't even know what the new one is called.
The new one is called Elevate. Charters can use it, or charters can use something of their own. We do not use Elevate. We use a system of our own, and I'm happy to share that with you in a future space. I'll make sure that you get eyes on it. We have a self-assessment rubric, and then that self-assessment rubric has a lot of the New Mexico Elevate components on it, but also includes things that just don't fit into New Mexico Elevate. And that is like our heavy on our advisory model, really understanding all of the data that we have to do in tracking students. And so it's got some of the same components, but then it has others as well. And I'll be sure to share that out so you guys can take a look at it and give feedback on it. I'd love that.
Thank you.
And the PDP is kind of aligned to that self-assessment rubric. So that the intention is they take the rubric and then they think about where they want to grow, and then they write a goal with their direct supervisor. Observations and walkthroughs, all of that still applies, right? A middle of the year conference and then an end of the year conference.
I had one question, and I'm going to say I know there's stuff I missed. When I saw 65 pages, I thought, well, this isn't going to happen all the way through the board meeting. And then I was so surprised by some of it. I stepped away because I was surprised. But the one thing I am wondering, because it talked a little bit about when you're having your meetings and the PLCs, can you alternate where they're held at? Since you're now going to maybe have a little corner, is there any way that, like, some meetings are held at MDC in their home campus and other ones are at North Fourth in their home campus? Because it did sound like they didn't say they felt unwelcome, they didn't say hostile, but they didn't feel comfortable being on North Fourth.
We've absolutely done that. I try to hold at least a couple of our PD days out at MDC. Sometimes that's tricky. Not all of our staff
That's what I was thinking.
have clearance at MDC. I've hired 4 of our 4 graduates as employees, which I love, but we've met most of them inside MDC. And so they're not going to get clearance to go back in MDC right away, and sometimes ever. And so that has also been problematic. I think that when I finally was able to digest all of it, because I had to step away several times too, as Michelle, when I was finally able to digest all of it, you know, I really do have a sense of, you know, grateful again that people are, because even the staff member who she shared with me in our exit interview. That was me. I didn't feel comfortable as a new staff member at Northforth. I think it's important to think about the context, because when it wasn't what she wrote into a survey, but when she sat in front of me and talked to me, her comments were more about how busy everybody was. And how, she just really didn't know where to fit in. And so it was she gave the example. She came down at one point, and I remember the day she had her daughter with her, and I walked right past her, and she said that just made her heart drop. And so again, that personal reflection, right? Like, I may have 47 things to do this afternoon, but she only had one interaction with me that afternoon, and I walked right past her as a new employee, and what she wanted me to do was say, "Hi, new employee, it's so good to see you. How are you doing? Are you settled in yet? Is there anything I can do for you?" And I just didn't have that capacity at that moment, but that has been a really good reflection. And so, we met in our last PD. And we talked about, our growing edges, our weaknesses, if you will, and we made, commitments to ourselves, and then found a accountability buddy who's going to check in with us every month next year and say, "How are you doing with your goal?" And my goal was to be a better manager of my calendar, because my calendar is dumb. My calendar is back to back to back to back to back, and so if I've been in meetings with people or on Zoom for 6 hours straight, I'm going to run to the bathroom and run back to my office. And I'm not going to stop and say, "Hi, new employee, how are you? How are you settling in? Is there anything I can do for you?" And that is powerful, right? That's meaningful. And so, my goal for my next year is not to book a single appointment at an hour block, but to block them all at 45-minute blocks, so that I have a little space. And so when I am transitioning from one thing to another, I can be a little more present. But also in that conversation, it was a reminder to me how limiting sometimes these quick written responses can be, because then there's all of this room for interpretation. Is all of my staff being rude and hostile to new members? Or when she had a chance to sit with me, was it, this particular moment that stuck out to her as, something that was uncomfortable?
I think things feel different too, because she may have been feeling some hurt. So there's a little bit more defensiveness when you're hurt. And especially if she had her daughter with her, she probably wanted to introduce her daughter. So a lot of that may be coming from hurt. And I don't want to take up a lot of time on it. I'm just thinking we dealt with that a lot. We had people in 7 different home offices and everything like that. There are a lot of and I'm not, just because the way my brain works, I can tell you where it's at, but a lot of the state, they're not national parks, they're not state parks, they're recreational facilities, like out on Rio Grande of Alameda. That's free. You can reserve that. It's not going to cost you anything. It's got a kitchen. Maybe you have staff meetings at neither campus, so nobody's on their home turf. There might be things to be able to think about that as you're talking to the leadership team, and problem solving is thinking about, what can we do environmental wise?
I appreciate that, Michelle. It's a great suggestion. We do go out. 2 of our PD days are out in the community at the end of December, at the end of June, and include kind of a lunch that I purchased. The school purchases for all staff. And we've done things like gone on scavenger hunts at the park. I'm
just talking. Yeah, I'm just talking about having a meeting.
One tricky part is in some of those spaces is if we're working, we don't have access, all of us, to internet, to our network files. Do you know what I mean? And so it's one of the challenges of, like, when we've had meetings at the height of COVID, we didn't have a big enough space for us all to fit unless we were really tight. So we were renting rooms down at Berta Faucio for our PD days. And it's a neutral space. And it also has its challenges, but I really appreciate
I don't know. We were able to make it work with UNM's system, and we were able to make it work. So I don't know. And that is like way, way protected. But it was just a thought as you're trying to problem solve.
I love it. It's a great thought, Michelle, but it's about that neutrality and that equity, right, across campuses and making sure that people feel seen, heard, and equally or equitably respected.
It's kind of like a mom and dad deciding which one works harder.
Mhm. Anything else about that cache of information? I also will just throw out, as part of our dash and we have a grant because of our designation. We're investing a lot of money in the upcoming year in instructional coaching for all of our instructors. They'll all get paired with a coach through Ed Connective, who has a great reputation and we've worked with in the past. And as part of that package, leaders are also going to get a coach focused on coaching and feedback cycles and how do we support our staff. And so I'm looking forward to a good year of professional development kind of independently as we invest a good chunk of that CSI MRI money into coaching next year. So I'm excited to what that will bring in terms of how leadership learns how to lean into some of this instead of avoid it.
That sounds great.
Just real quick, there's a couple other things that I wanted to just touch base on that was in the director's report. I won't go through all of it. I did mean to put this on your radar in a different way, and I totally forgot. But if you happen to be poking around in the Monday morning memo, and let's see if I can open the right one or not. Yep, this is what I want to share with you. I will send this out via email as well. But the Public Charter Schools of New Mexico has a charter school, CSP, charter school program, a federal grant that's helping kind of provide support for charter schools across the state. And they've just released a report on reconnecting students and re-engaging students, and we were highlighted in it. So I meant to put that in the director's report itself, and it just didn't cross my radar, but I'll send this out via email as well. The report highlights how high schools graduate a lot of dropouts, how re-engagement schools graduate a lot of dropouts in the state. And so there are 4 schools highlighted, and we are one of them. So this is pretty cool. This went to the state legislature. This went to PED. I got a lot of people reaching out in public spaces, congratulating and commenting and those types of things. So I will forward this to you as well. I thought it was interesting that I am described as projecting both a certain toughness and warmth. Oh, that's kind of, I was like, that's not me, but with this, I'm sorry, I'm
This
struggling.
came up at that little convention deal last week or week
Oh,
before.
did it?
Uh-huh.
This report was shared pretty widely. And so it's an honor to be recognized as a re-engagement school that others can learn from. We're described as having best practices, so that's kind of cool. The only other thing that I really wanted to just touch on was the idea of what's happening at Job Corps, which is very much up in the air. We didn't know this until late May, but the Department of Labor actually hasn't allowed any Job Corps center to accept a new applicant since March. And so this, I think, has been coming down the pipeline a little longer than people knew. February, I'm in close contact with our Albuquerque Job Corps Center director, and he's been sharing since February. I got doged. I got to let go of my dental assistant program, because they provided a dental services on site for students. He had to let go of his dental program. I had to let go. we opened, he had to let go, his budget kept getting cut, his budget kept getting cut. We were gonna start serving their adult ed students in addition to some high school students because he couldn't afford his in-house HiSET teacher anymore. And so we've been in contact and he kept saying, I hope this is it. I hope this is it. I hope they're done with us. And then late May, all Job Corps students got a text that Job Corps centers were closing. And they had a week to vacate essentially. Several lawsuits have been filed across the country. The only ruling currently is in New York. There is a district judge who has an injunction in place. There was a hearing yesterday. At that hearing, the plaintiffs had all of the arguments about why Job Corps should stay open. The only argument the defendant made was that this was the wrong court for this to be heard, that it needed to be in a federal court, not in a district one. That was the only argument they made. That judge temporarily stayed his injunction until next Wednesday. I am hopeful. A lot of people are hopeful. Our Albuquerque Job Corps can house up to 300 participants. At the time, they haven't taken anybody new in since early March, late February. So the numbers have been dwindling. When the text went out and students were told they had to find other arrangements, I think they were at 183 students. About half of them left immediately because why would you stay? There's no promise of certification. There's no promise of finishing your secondary degree, and there's no ongoing services. The other half really don't have anywhere to go. And so since the injunction, our local Albuquerque Job Corps has quit sending students home, but that is in direct insubordination of the Department of Labor orders for that the center director. So he's really stuck between here and a hard place. I don't know if the judge does make a permanent injunction and the Department of Labor can't close them, only Congress can close them. I don't know that the judge can force them to fund it though, or to continue taking in new students. And so the good news is that the opposition to Job Corps closes is growing across the country. You can now see dozens and dozens of news stories from all over the country if you Google it. I don't know, it's a big question mark for us. About 30% of our high school North Forth population is co-enrolled at Job Corps. And so, if we think about that high school North Forth campus losing 30% of its numbers, it is a per pupil funded program. And so if those numbers aren't regained in some other way, then eventually about 30% of the high school North Forth staff, right, may have to be cut. I mean, that's just the reality of these types of things. I think we can make up the numbers in some ways, but it's really gonna have to increase our game in terms of engagement and retention. We bring in enough community students, we don't necessarily retain enough community students to make up those numbers in a sustainable way. So the challenge, Job Corps students also really provide community down there. They're there every day, where community students are kind of in or out. And so it will be new challenges in terms if Job Corps students don't return or if they dwindle away to nothing, if this group is allowed to stay. We're watching it and we're, gonna be as responsive as we can in terms of recruitment and retention and keeping staff. But it is a situation that staff are aware of and that the board should be aware of as well in terms of the future numbers at that campus for high school.
Yeah, thanks for that. That update, Beth, is such a big deal, and it's just crazy that it's a nationwide thing that's happening.
Heartbreaking.
Yeah. If there's any advocacy that we can do as a board, I think maybe we should think about that maybe for for the future at some point, maybe there's some way we could weigh in on what's happening and advocate in some way, or just personally.
There is a lot of organizations stepping up to help students currently. I mean, Department of Labor is saying this is about outcomes. I don't know, it's tricky. It's not an efficient program and it doesn't have the outcomes that they would like to see. I wish that they would approach it from, how do we revamp it then, or even phase it out if that is absolutely, the direction that this administration is going. But the way that they just think of people as expendable in terms of business decisions it makes me really mad. I can say again that the about 75 to 100 students are still on that campus. Do have a lot of organizations reaching out. JAG has moved in and is casework managing, mentoring each one of them, and places like New Day are being responsive to try to house those that really don't have anywhere to go. But it's kind of gross.
It's very gross. It's heartbreaking, like I said.
Yeah. Okay. Beth, was there anything to go over for the APS performance review?
I linked in the special education report, which is beautiful, lots of greens, some things to work on. As always, Patricia comes to the table with a growth mindset, and so she's always giving us good suggestions and guidance on how to improve. But super proud of our program and the results it's getting. Haven't seen the reports, the full report, but I'll make sure that comes up in a future conversation and is shared with you when it comes out.
Okay. Well, was there anything else to discuss before we talk about future business and then adjourn? Okay. So our next board meeting is on July 19th.
Well, I did have two things and they're fast.
Yeah,
They're
go ahead.
fast. Martha and I met about the onboarding thing. What was really interesting at the conference that they had, there are several charter schools already doing onboarding for their councils. And so I did send it to Martha. I think she had already left for Ireland, but really some nice work that's already being done. And so that was a good thing. The other piece I'm going to say, and it could even be at a different meeting, I do think it might be something to consider as a council at graduation that, and I'm all into cards. I'm still a believer that you send a card, you sign a card, you mail a card, but I think it might be something to consider as a board that we congratulate each graduate with a card that's given to them during graduation.
That's nice.
So I mentioned that to Martha and she said about putting it or talking to you all about it. So that's all it was, those two things.
I love that.
I love that idea. Maybe we could just add that to the next agenda for next meeting to just talk about that and the logistics.
That'll work.
Cool. Okay, so yeah, and in the future we'll be reviewing our bylaws. There is a checklist that we can use. I'm not exactly sure where it is. And then Beth, do you mind just talking a little bit about the 5-year strategic plan development?
Yeah, I mentioned it a little bit in the director's report as well, so appreciate the opportunity to expand a little bit. There's, as part of our designation, again, remember our graduation rates are about 22-23%, and to be successful, they've got to be up in the 70s or 60s. I don't remember where it's far away, the benchmark. But those are 4-year graduation cohorts, right? Individuals who graduate by the time they're 18. So because of that data and the way that things are designated, we are a school in monitoring in transformation and monitoring by the Public Education Department. And one of the new requirements for schools in that category is that the board and leadership develop a 5-year strategic plan. And so a way to kind of, and I was like, well, isn't that like the charter? And they were like, no. And I was like, oh, because charters are also a 5-year plan.
Yeah.
But that being said, this upcoming year is the year that we will be preparing to resubmit our charter application. And so it will also be a year that we have to submit a 5-year strategic plan. And so I'll present it in chunks. We've got guidance from PED on the types of things they want to see, but it's just some foreshadowing that throughout the next fiscal year, we'll be working on a 5-year strategic plan. I'd like it to align and complement as much as possible our 5-year charter application so that our goals and desired outcomes all align. And then of course, our annual DASH plans and our 90-day plans can all kind of trickle down from those big goals in mind. And so just some foreshadowing that will kind of start big and then have to little by little over the next 6 to 8 months so that we can submit on time draft a 5-year strategic plan that is the boards. So I guess the big difference is the charter applications is the schools, and the 5-year strategic plan is supposed to be from the board perspective in terms of how then the school aligns with what the board wants to see over the next 5 years. So a little bit of foreshadowing there, and I'll have some more information as we dive into it.
Cool. Thank
Beth,
you,
do you foresee needing a committee to work on that?
And that was one of the things that I
That's your
mentioned in
question.
the thank you, Tina, that I kind of proposed. I didn't think of it, but I did write it in the report. It could be something that we add in, every month, that we kind of try to shorten up some of our other conversations or agree to go a little bit later so that we can consistently make progress on it and the whole board could participate. Alternatively, a committee could form and do more of the work directly with the leadership team and then report back to the larger board for feedback and approvals. That's really up to the board how you guys want to approach it. I'm happy to do whatever makes the most sense to you guys.
Okay. All right. Well, unless there's anything further, can I get a motion to adjourn the meeting at 5:34 p.m.?
I'll move we adjourn the meeting at 5:34 p.m.
Thank you, Deb. And do I have a second?
I second.
Charmaine, thank you for seconding. All in favor?
Aye.
Hi.
Aye.
All right. Thank you all.
Thank you, Sabah. Good job.
Good job, Brennan.
You did a great job, Siobhan. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, no problem.
It's not that bad.
No.